Elias Crane had spent 15 years restoring priceless artworks, learning the intimate details of museum security systems, building relationships with curators and guards. Then the economy collapsed, the museum laid him off, and creditors started circling like vultures. Within 6 months, he'd lost everything: his apartment, his car, his dignity. Now he stood across the street from the Castellina Museum, watching the building where he'd once worked, planning to commit the crime that would either save him or destroy what little remained of his life. The target was the Midnight Rosa diamond necklace, commissioned by a Persian Shah in 1887, containing 247 flawless stones arranged in a cascade that resembled falling petals. It was valued at $18 million. But to the right buyer, someone who didn't care about provenance or legality, would fetch $6 million, easily, enough to pay off Elias's debts and disappear. The necklace was kept in the museum's high-security vault, a room Elias knew intimately. He'd been inside dozens of times during his tenure, always supervised, always logged. The vault's security was legendary: motion sensors, pressure plates, and a laser grid that created a three-dimensional web of light. Break any beam, and the entire museum would lock down in seconds, steel shutters sealing every exit while security descended. The laser grid was the impossible part. It covered every approach to the pedestal where the necklace rested, updating its pattern every 30 seconds using an algorithm designed by a military contractor. There was no way through not without setting off alarms that would bring the police in minutes. But Elias had discovered something during his years as a restorer. Security systems are designed by engineers who understand technology, but don't always understand light itself. And light, Elias had learned, could be manipulated. The flaw was simple. The laser grid was designed to detect interruptions in the beams, but it couldn't distinguish between an object blocking the light and the light being redirected. If you could bend the lasers around your body, the sensors would register nothing unusual. Elias had spent 3 months perfecting his method. He'd purchased high-grade first surface mirrors, the kind used in telescopes, where the reflective coating was on the front of the glass rather than the back, eliminating distortion. He'd practiced in a warehouse he'd rented under a false name, setting up his own laser grid and learning to position the mirrors with millimeter precision. But mirrors alone wouldn't be enough. The laser grid was visible in the dark red beams that painted the vault like a spider's web. What Elias needed was to see the beams in advance, to map them before he entered, so he could position his mirrors perfectly. That's where the UV light came in. The lasers operated in the visible spectrum, but the vault also contained a UV security system that Elias had helped install 3 years ago. It used ultraviolet light to authenticate certain pieces, revealing hidden signatures and detecting forgeries. The UV emitters were positioned throughout the vault, and Elias knew their exact locations. His plan was elegant. He would use a powerful UV flashlight to make the laser beams temporarily visible through fluorescent dust particles he'd de-release into the vault's ventilation system. The dust was invisible under normal light, but would glow bright blue under UV, creating a map of the laser grid that would last for approximately 4 minutes before the ventilation system filtered it out. The execution began 3 days before the heist. Elias, using his old maintenance access codes that hadn't been deactivated, entered the museum's mechanical systems and planted a small device in the ventilation duct serving the vault. The device was programmed to release the fluorescent dust at 3:47 a.m. On Thursday morning, exactly 13 minutes after the security guard's hourly check of the vault level. On Thursday night, Elias arrived at the museum wearing the uniform of a commercial cleaning service that had recently won the contract for the building. He de-intercepted the real cleaning crew's schedule and created a fake work order for an emergency carpet cleaning on the 3rd floor. The guards, accustomed to maintenance workers appearing at odd hours, barely glanced at his forged ID. At 3:34 a.m., Elias was positioned outside the vault entrance. He disabled the door alarm using a bypass code he memorized years ago. Embarrassing security flaw. He reported to management, but that had never been fixed due to budget cuts. 3:47 a.m. The fluorescent dust released, invisible but present. Elias entered the vault, his UV flashlight scanning the space. Suddenly, the room erupted in ghostly blue light as the dust particles caught in the laser beams began to glow. It was beautiful and terrible, a three-dimensional web of light that revealed exactly where every laser passed. He had 4 minutes. Elias moved with the precision of a surgeon, positioning his mirrors on collapsible stands he'd designed specifically for this job. Each mirror caught a laser beam and redirected it around the path he needed to take. First mirror, second, third, building a corridor of bent light that curved around the pedestal like water flowing around a stone. 2 minutes gone, the path was complete. Elias stepped into the corridor he'd created, his body now occupying the space where laser beams should have been. But the beams themselves were redirected, flowing around him, still reaching their sensors on the far side of the vault. As far as the security system was concerned, nothing had changed. He reached the pedestal and carefully removed the midnight rose, replacing it with a replica he decommissioned from a jeweler who specialized in costume jewelry for theater productions. The fake was cubic zirconia worthless, but optically identical to the untrained eye. It would pass the casual visual inspections that guards performed hourly. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Time to retreat. Elias backed out of his mirror corridor, then quickly dismantled it, collapsing the stands and packing the mirrors into a maintenance bag. The fluorescent dust was already fading as the ventilation system filtered it out. For minutes, he was out of the vault, the door resealed, the alarm bypass code erased from the system using a remote command he'd prepared. His escape was a masterwork of psychology. He didn't run, he didn't hide. He walked to the third-floor storage room, where he'd planted evidence of the emergency carpet cleaning he was supposed to be performing. He spent 20 minutes actually cleaning a section of hallway, establishing his alibi in case anyone reviewed the security footage. At 4:30 a.m., he logged out with the overnight security guard, complaining about the late-night call and the measly overtime pay. The guard commiserated, mentioned his own financial troubles, and waved Elias out. The theft wasn't discovered until the next morning, when a curator arrived to photograph the midnight rose for an upcoming catalog. She noticed immediately that something was wrong. The way the stones caught the light was different. Tests confirmed it. The necklace was fake. The police investigation focused on sophisticated organized crime rings, professional art thieves with international connections. They never seriously considered a former employee who'd been laid off years ago and was supposedly working as a freelance consultant in Chicago. But there was a twist that Elias hadn't anticipated. The museum's director, a man named Christopher Hale, had been planning his own theft. He'd been embezzling from the museum for years, using fake restoration invoices and inflated insurance claims. When the diamond necklace disappeared, he saw an opportunity to cover his crimes by claiming the theft was larger than it actually was, inflating the value of other missing pieces. The insurance investigation revealed Hale's embezzlement, and he was arrested within a week. The scandal destroyed the museum's reputation and led to a complete overhaul of its security systems. Elias, watching the news from his new apartment in Seattle, felt a strange mix of guilt and satisfaction. He'd gotten the necklace, sold it to a private collector in Dubai for $5 million, enough to pay his debts and start over. But the museum he'd loved, the institution he'd served faithfully for 15 years, was now tarnished by someone else's greed. He'd proven that the cleverest thief doesn't fight security systems directly. They understand that all technology has limitations, that light can be bent, and that the human eye sees what it expects to see. His mirrors and UV light had created an invisible path through an impossible defense, and no one would ever know how he'd done it. The midnight rose sat in a vault in Dubai now, admired by a collector who would never be able to display it publicly. Elias had enough money to live comfortably, but he'd lost something more valuable: the pride of working with beautiful things, the satisfaction of restoration rather than destruction. Sometimes, he reflected, the cleverest escape leaves you wondering if you really escaped at all, or if you simply traded one prison for another.